Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of AIC TV in conjunction with Dukascopy TV. I'm Edward Karr, your host, and we're coming to you today from the Hotel Intercontinental in Geneva, Switzerland. We have a very, very special interview today. It's with Mr. Ronnie Chan. Mr. Chan is chairman of Hang Lung Properties. He's one of Asia's most influential entrepreneurs. He's a billionaire real estate developer, and we're very, very fortunate to have him with us here today. So, Ronnie, thank you so much for being with us today, and welcome to AIC TV.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure to have you with us here today in Geneva, and we look forward to your address to the American International Club. You know, Ronnie, you are one of Asia's most successful entrepreneurs, and I was wondering if you could share maybe just a couple secrets of your success with our audience.
Well, first of all, I won't call myself one of the most successful. If that is the definition of success, perhaps the standard is a little bit too low. I'm sure there's a lot more room to grow and advance. But operating in Asia, quite unlike operating in the West, you have to know the local environment well. That said, the whole world is moving toward a better governance, corporate governance environment. So people like myself, who have been in the West for many years and hence very intuitively in line with the Western ways of doing business and practices and governance, and yet added on top of that the language, cultural capability to understand and work in the local environment. I think those two are very important. Westerners can succeed in Asia in many things, but as an entrepreneur, which is the question that you have, it will be a little bit challenging unless he or she is able to adapt to the local environment.
And when you talk about the environment, the world economy, we had this really, really severe financial crisis back in 2008, 2009. The United States has recapitalized its financial system and the banks. Europe is still having challenges. Asia, especially China, came in with a massive stimulus program. What's your outlook now for the world economy? I mean, we find ourselves in mid-2014, stock markets in the Western world up at almost all-time highs. I mean, where do you think we're going from here?
I'm a big fan of the American economy. I think that not only is America recovering a lot faster than Europe, I happen to believe that, and I've been saying this for now a few years, that the United States may well become a very significant manufacturing center of the world as it did once upon a time in the 50s and 60s. And the reason is very simple. You look at manufacturing, you need several factors. Land, America has plenty of it. Capital, America has plenty of it. Technology, America has plenty of it, right? Energy, America has now cheaper than ever energy. Raw material, no other continent has as much probably as North America. The only thing America does not have is cheap labor. However, now with technology, 3D printing, robotics, material science, many of these things have made labor not as important as before in the process of manufacturing. So I see a world, as I look out in the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years, that America may well become a manufacturing center of the world, especially in the higher value-added manufacturing, that segment.
Sure.
So happened that America is now hiddenly, unspokenly retrenching from globalization by America, right? So all these things will also help move manufacturing back to the United States. So that, I think, America is going to be awesome in the next 5, 7, 10 years. Europe will just chuck along. I remember a couple of years back, I was in a meeting with Henry Kissinger, Angela Merkel, and whoever else. And after everybody spoke, Henry was the last person to speak. And basically, he told everybody, you all have been fighting about EU. I know I'm sitting in Geneva today in Switzerland, so not exactly the same, but nonetheless, Europe as a whole, EU as a whole. Henry basically said, nobody in the world cares. Mm-hmm. And so Europe has to figure its own way forward.
So how about some of the geopolitical relationships? If you see this reemergence of manufacturing and industrial power in the United States, how do you see specifically the political relationship between America, China, and Europe developing over the next 10 years?
That's what the problem is, as far as I'm concerned. I think the United States is absolutely doing the wrong thing vis-a-vis China. I think China can be and wants to be a co-guarantor, if you will, of global peace to the extent possible. By that I mean, if the United States and China were to work together, the world will have a much better chance of having more lasting peace. Mm-hmm. Many problems from around the world, from African problems, Iran problem, North Korean problems, many problems, not to mention all the non-geopolitical issues, which are now becoming geopolitical: environment, fighting terrorism, money laundering, what have you. With all those things, only with the United States and China working together will we have a better chance of a better outcome. Obviously, you have to work with EU. Obviously, you have to work with Japan and India, all the major players in the world.
When we look at China specifically, China, after the financial crisis 2008-9, came in with a very, very massive government stimulus. Myself, as an international investment manager, I'm certainly not a Chinese expert, but I read a lot of research. And it seems like a lot of the top analysts are diametrically opposed. Some say China currently is in a massive credit bubble that could crash any time of epic proportions. Other analysts say, no, everything's fine, and the central government will have the foresight to manage this process through. What do you think, being on the ground there and really having all of your experience? I mean, are we in a massive bubble with credit, with real estate prices, or do you think everything's going to be fine in the next 5 to 10 years?
First of all, the West is a mature economy. So bubbles, for example, happen every 7, 8, 10, 12 years. In developing economies, it's not just China. And I have operated in Southeast Asia, for example, and Hong Kong, over the last 20, 30 years. We live with it. You guys experience every 8, 10 years. For Asia, such as China in the last 20 years, bubble is every 2 years. Mm-hmm. So the perspective is very, very different. The problem that China is facing today, serious, no question. But if you were to look at economic history of the last 20 years, it probably has at least 3, if not 4 times when China had a similar problem. Mm-hmm. And in those days, China had a lot less resources to deal with those problems. And today, China has a lot of liquid asset resource to deal with those problems. The problem is no question there. Anybody who says it doesn't exist, as far as I'm concerned, is from Mars. Mm-hmm. That said, will they blow up like some people in the West would predict? I am not so sure. Because China has had to deal with a similar situation 3, 4 times in the last 15, 20 years with a lot less resource. Mm-hmm. So I am relatively sanguine that China will be able to manage the problem.
And that being said, where are you actually investing your own money today? Where do you see the opportunities over the next 5 or 10 years?
Oh, my company is a very simple one. We only do one thing. We believe in what Graham Dodd said, what Warren Buffett says, you do one thing that is a good thing well and be among the best. The market will reward you. So all we do is we build, we own, we manage world-class commercial properties in China. A lot of people say that market is really overbuilt. If you were to just look at numbers, the number of malls that is being built, the number of square footage that's being built, it is humongous. But people forget one thing. The high-end shopping centers are not fungible asset. It's like finding a wife. 3 girls, all beautiful, but you just like one, right? The market likes one. And for location, size, design, construction, there are some, what I call real estate genetics that determines the success or failure of a shopping center. And granted, probably 90-95% of the shopping centers in China are really lousy, substandard. All that tells me is that if you are the 5%, there's plenty of room to grow, right? So I'm relatively comfortable about the situation.
Okay, sounds good. Well, Ronnie, thank you so much for being with us today. Any final words of wisdom you'd like to share with our audience?
I never think of myself of having any wisdom to speak of, so you put it that way, I am speechless.
Okay, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching AIC TV in conjunction with Dukascopy TV. Another great interview here with Mr. Chan, one of Asia's billionaire entrepreneurs. Please stay tuned in the future for more exciting interviews.